Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. Today, I just wanted to talk about relationship burnout and communication, and to stress the fact that, there's lots of couples who are communicating, and that might look like yelling, just a lot of sort of verbal diarrhea. Like, there's lots of times when we're communicating, but are we communicating effectively? That's the question. And so when we consider effective communication, I would say that most of us weren't really given the skills that we needed to effectively communicate in our interpersonal relationships. So we could have a really robust vocabulary, we could be very well spoken and well read, we could have, a million degrees, and one of them could be in English lit, right? And still we could be poor communicators. And so what does it mean to be an effective communicator within a romantic relationship, or within a relationship maybe with our children or our parents or our friends? Really, it comes down to, excuse me, a lot of respect, not just for the other person, because sometimes that's hard to feel, depending on the situation, but really it's about having that deep respect for yourself. And it really goes deeper into the self-love. When we are coming from a place of self-love, we're more assured, and um, we have more at stake in protecting our boundaries, right? We know how important they are, and so we have to get really good at communicating them and then sticking to them. So communication is as much about learning, effective communication is as much about learning the right words to use to express yourself, but then it also involves active listening, which I think a lot of people struggle with, and I know I do. It's one of my things that I need to work on constantly. And, I know that if you asked my spouse, he would say that that's one of the things that I struggle with, is active listening when it comes to him and I having a disagreement. I seem to be able to do it much better for other people. I can do it for my clients, but for some reason, when it comes to my spouse, and I think some of it for me comes from the fact that I know him so well that I often make the assumption that I know what he's going to say, and I'm reacting to that before he's even finished what he's saying. And so that's something that I have to really stop myself from doing within our conversations. And how would I even know that if I hadn't gained some self-awareness, if we hadn't had conversations about communication, and if he hadn't felt like he could express himself within that conversation? So, these are things that we can work on individually, and then we can work on them together. So, for years, I think both Donnie and I recognized that we weren't great at effective communication when we were arguing, and we really didn't like the people that we became when we were arguing. And so we actually had to acknowledge that to each other, with each other, and then we had to work on doing things differently. And it was really hard at first. Sometimes we slip into old patterns of behavior, but we become much more conscious about how we communicate even when we're upset. And then we also have gotten better at sort of taking breaks. And it's okay to go to bed angry if that's, what happens if you're at the point in your night where you have to go to bed. This whole, don't go to bed angry advice that we were given when we got married, it just doesn't make realistic and practical sense. There are going to be issues that aren't going to get resolved in just a day or two, or a night, or an hour, right? We can recognize that, and also know that if I'm going to bed angry at you, it doesn't mean that I don't love you. It doesn't mean that I don't respect you. It just means that we haven't resolved our issue to a point where we feel like we can communicate more calmly about it. And that takes time. And sometimes it takes that time to just let things cool down. Right? Maybe you go to sleep and you wake up in the morning and you think, I'm not even sure what I was angry about now that I've had some distance from it. So sometimes we need that space. We need to get the distance. So staying in the conversation and continuing to keep battering the other person with your thoughts and feelings and whatnot isn't always the right play. Sometimes the right play is to separate, go to other corners, let things simmer down. Give yourself time to think. Give yourself time for reason to come in. If it's something that's been, eating away at you for a long time and you're just letting it out, let the other person have time to let it, sit and settle. Right? So, effective communication really starts from within, and then it's skills that you can build. I don't think I would have been able to build skills to effectively communicate with my husband if I didn't know myself so well. Hey, Ray, how you doing, bud? Thanks for joining me. And so it really took getting to know my triggers and my, deeper feelings that were coming up for me as a result of the argument in order for me to communicate that. So instead of communicating that surface level anger that was coming up for me, the hurt and feeling respected or heard, I had really deeper and so what was that triggering for me? And then when I've got introspection, I can come back to the conversation and be like, what was really coming up for me was I felt like you were listening to me, that you didn't care to meet my needs or whatever. So that, gain that perspective and you come back and you say, this is what it was bringing up from me. And it doesn't necessarily mean it was their fault in the first place. It just means through the argument or the talking that was coming up for you, and you're asking the other person to hear that and just acknowledge it. And maybe they can fix it. Maybe it's something they should be maybe attentive to working on themselves, but maybe it was something else entirely, and that maybe something they were doing of triggering this reaction in you that was something deeper, and that's where therapy can help. And when I have people come, hello, welcome. When I have people come to sessions with me, I don't typically see couples together. I will work with couples, but I usually see them separately and not at the same time, in that I'll treat one person and then if still issues, I'll treat the other person separately. And there's like Chinese walls up where whatever was discussed with one person, even if the other person brings it, it's not something that will out the relationship I would build with them. So what I do for people, though, even if it's a couple in struggle and they're wanting to learn better communication, so working with them one and allow them to take care of those triggers, take care of the root cause of what's really going on, what patterns are playing out in their relationships. Because, realistically, if you look at your relationship, especially if you've been in it for a long time, you see the patterns keep playing. And not just in your romantic relationship. If you're being real and you look at your interpersonal relationships, you'll see the things that keep happening within the relationships all the time. And so those patterns in relationships really, a deep issue that only fix individuals. So we come to couplehood as people with our experiences perception, and colors that that we are in relationship, obviously. And so us bringing sort of like crap with us and baggage, uh, we just, if both have baggage, they're piling up in the bag or whatever, it's going to be a little bit challenging to get. So each person deal with their baggage, but they're approaching the other person in a more authentic way. And there, that's when you decide to start to explore ways to communicate and different ways of being together. We kind of what's the root cause. It's hard to fix this, the surface, because those are just symptoms. Symptom in marriage is, all the time. But why are we? What are we fighting over? What comes up for each of us in the argument? How are we feeling as a person separate in those arguments? How do we feel as a couple when we interact like that? There's so many things that we explore. We just have to recognize that all these things come up for simply something deep, much like smoking, not the smoking is the problem, but smoking isn't. We get to the root of why smoking, with overeating, any kind of behavior that we do, any habits that we, those go up in our relationships. They do. So if we look at those as being the system, something deep, we need to do the find the deep, right? This is usually helped by being with someone outside the situation, right? So great to have that you can. I have really friends that I talk to about that happened between my husband and my issues. So I have a therapist of my own, right? So that if there's because there's things I don't want my friends necessarily, because they know my husband and they know, and I want to necessarily, and not now, but early years of really trying to relationship right. Um, things that I wouldn't people because I want them to hear their view of him or myself or as a couple, and so it's having a that you can go to and from your group family is really helpful. Again, I have people know personally, and in that it depends how well. But I have clients who own before I got my diploma who come to me because they know me, feel comfortable doing stuff, and know that I share that with else. So there's pluses to talk to people, just depends on the trust with them, whether you what you're talking about, color, the view of the other, especially your work thing. Nothing worse than to an all of on you, spouse, absolutely, getting more their the floor, and they file together or something awkward. They just on relationship trust that within your and also can they hold that space for you to know what they tolerate you of the other, right? It's important. What I want to emphasize is communicate is really from self-knowledge and self clear. I want it's for me to what I need. It's a matter of learning to sort of be switching so that they hear they hear say and I but they don't give it to never you right. And, so can you what you need making them feel not responsible for that they're not doing it right. If somebody you were listen to when I talk, like oh I'm working I'm gonna be defensive, but that's personally I would take and be like hey so work on that. What if you're in badly when you bring up and and it could be that the to makes it like I oh rhyme I've been shy but game we we do better in person and a lot of times can we do in the themselves say that time and so like go from like you know or don't that I mean not change just change that person not ready really what you're really a lot you need um person and that advice